Hello, very good morning, students. As you know very well, that we have completed 11 chapters of Aristotle's Poetics. Today we are going to discuss the chapter 12 and 13 of Aristotle's Poetics. The chapter 12 is about the quantitative parts of tragedy. Here, Aristotle gives us the quantitative sections of tragedy. Just as we have in modern time the acts and scenes of any play, in the same way, in ancient time, Aristotle has defined the quantitative parts of tragedy. And these are the matters of Greek theoretical convention. So it was the convention of Greeks that they divided the play, the tragedy, into scenes as we have today. Aristotle has listed the tragedy into these quantitative sections. 4 quantitative sections. Number 1, prologue. Number 2, episode. Number 3, exhort. Number 4, choric song. Here the choric song is again divided or subdivided into parod, stasimon and komos. So in this way we have the sections of any tragedy, conventional sections of any tragedy according to Aristotle. So the number 1, prologue. What is prologue? So according to Aristotle, the prologue is the entire part which precedes the parod of the chorus. That is chorus. Chorus has 3 parts. As I have choric song, it has 3 parts: parod, stasimon, komos. So the prologue is the entire part which comes before the parod of chorus. So before the parod of chorus, the section is called, the complete section, entire part which precedes parod is called prologue. The parod, now what is parod? The parod is the entrance song of the chorus. So before this entrance song, the entire part is called the prologue. And the parod is the song of the chorus, the beginning, the entrance song of the chorus. Then we have episode. Now what is episode? Episode is that entire part of a tragedy which is between complete choric songs. So the entire part which is between complete choric songs, choric जो song है उसके बीच का जो entire part है, that is called episode. Episode is equivalent of an act in our drama. As in our modern drama, we have acts, in the same way, episodes were conventionally section of tragedy in ancient time or in Greek time or in Aristotle's time. Then we have the stasimon. What is stasimon? Stasimon is a choric ode, is a choric song. That is the stasimon. And the komos is a joint lamentation of chorus and the actors together. A joint lamentation in the end of any tragedy, that is called the komos. And the last one, that is exod. It is the entire part of the tragedy after the last song of the chorus. So whatever remains after the final song of the chorus, we have the exod. So the prologue, the parode, the episode, the exod, the choric song, stasimon, comos. In this way, we have this division given by Aristotle in this chapter. That is, we have only the division sections of any tragedy. Okay? Okay. Now come to chapter 13. And this is about the structure of a perfect tragedy. Or here the philosopher Aristotle is discussing about ideal tragic hero of tragedy. Let's go what he says. Aristotle, as we have seen, prefers complex plots. He defined simple plots and complex plots. And the complex plots, I think you remember, which have the sudden changes. There are the sudden happenings, is called the complex plot. If there is a sudden change in the situation, if there is the sudden change in the character's actions or the attitudes. So this kind of things should be there in the complex plot we have seen, and Aristotle himself prefers this one. And this has been already defined in chapter 11, we have already done. Then we have also seen the distinctive tragic emotions of any tragedy are pity and fear. So the tragedy, the function of the tragedy is to arouse pity and fear in the heart and minds of the audience. If the tragedy or if the plot is not able to arouse pity and fear, it means it's not a tragedy at all. So the plot must arouse these emotions. Therefore, Aristotle gives here three kinds of plots which should be avoided, because the plot should be such which can arouse the emotions, pity and fear. So he gives us a list of three kinds of plots which should be avoided in a tragedy. If they are avoided, it means it's a good tragedy. If they are not avoided, it means it's not a good tragedy. Or he means to say it may not be a tragedy at all. So the number one, he says, perfectly good man must not be shown passing from happiness to misery. That is, in a tragedy, perfectly good man must not be shown. A man, a character, a hero who is perfectly a good man. So that character should not be the part of the tragedy. It should not be shown in the tragedy, because it is passing from happiness to misery. So tragedy means the misery, the unhappiness, the sadness. So a character who passes from happiness to misery cannot be a perfectly good man. So a perfectly good man should be avoided in a tragic plot. It should not be shown, because he says that for such an action will be disgusting and odious. It will not be liked, it will not be entertained. and it will not arouse pity and fear, because a man is perfectly good and he was happy, but very soon he come to the misery. So in this way it won't create any kind of pity and fear. The audience won't feel such thing. They will think that it was a good man, it was perfectly a good man. So this kind of unhappening, this kind of misery can never take place in his life. So a perfectly good man should be avoided. Number two, he says that a bad man who is passing from misery to happiness, who was, bad man is always in a misery. Everyone expects that he must be sad or miserable. So passing from misery to happiness is also not suitable for tragedy. So neither a perfectly good man nor a bad man is suitable for tragedy. Obviously, such situation is not at all tragic, because they won't create any kind of emotions and fear in the mind of the audience. Number third, Aristotle says that an extremely bad man falling from happiness to misery is equally unfit. His fate is well deserved. So an extremely bad man. So if there is a man who is very bad in nature, in character, so everyone expects that he deserves miseries, he deserves the sentence, he deserves the unhappiness and the fall. So if he comes from happiness to misery, it will not create any kind of emotions in the audience. So in a tragedy, an extremely bad man should also be avoided. Then he says, pity and fear are aroused by the undeserved suffering of one like us. So Aristotle here clarifies that pity and fear can only be aroused by the undeserved, the person who is undeserved, who is not able to get that one, undeserved suffering of one. So the suffering that should not be given to him, that should not be with him, but he is getting them. That is, although he was not deserving those suffering, but he had to face those sufferings like us. So the suffering like us as we suffer, that can only arouse pity and fear. So an extremely bad man is not like us, because human nature is mingled yarn of good and bad. So he can never arouse pity and fear, because we will think that he deserves for that, because he is a bad man, therefore sufferings are for him. So the character or the hero should be like us, that is, the undeserved suffering he is to face. Then the critic says, not Aristotle, that there can be a fourth situation in which a good man passes from misery to happiness. But Aristotle makes no mention of it. There is also a fourth situation. Our critics, modern critics say, and this situation is that a good man passes from unhappiness to happiness, from misery to happiness. But Aristotle doesn't accept it. There is no mention of such situation in poetics, in the poetics. So in this way, Aristotle has ruled out what? What he has ruled out? Utter villains and men preeminently just and good as heroes proper to tragedies. So he has rejected utter villains or preeminently just and good. So utter goodness and utter villains should be avoided according to Aristotle. They are not proper to tragedy. he proceeds to lay down the qualification of an ideal hero. Then he talks about an ideal hero. He talks about the chief characteristics of an ideal tragic hero. He says, in the first place, an ideal tragic hero must be a person of an intermediate kind. He must be neither utter villain nor a man perfectly good and just, but he should be in the middle. Intermediate होना चाहिए. Intermediate होना चाहिए. Just a minute. Then he says, on the whole, he should be a good man, but with ordinary human weaknesses and frailties. He should be a good man, but he must also have the ordinary human weakness. Human errors should be there in the character. He must not be perfectly good. He should be like us. He should be just as we human beings. We have the goodness as well as the errors, weaknesses. So the character, the hero of any tragedy should be like that. Pity and fear would be aroused by his misfortunes. So pity and fear will come out by his misfortunes. It will be the misfortune that will fall upon him, then only we will feel pity and fear for him. And his misfortunes must not be wholly undeserved. And those misfortunes should not be wholly undeserved. He should deserve because he has committed some kind of error. Therefore, he is facing that suffering. They must result from his own actions. That is, these misfortunes should come out from his own actions, on errors, on mistakes that he does due to his lack of knowledge, due to his ambitions, etc. For this, Aristotle uses the word hamartia, which has given rise to much debate. And for this, he has used the word hamartia. And hamartia means that is the error of judgment or the miscalculation rather than any moral weakness or depravity. So in the hero, in the ideal tragic hero, there must be error of judgment or miscalculation or his own miscalculation of the situation. That's why he will have to face the sufferings. And those sufferings, if he will face, that will only create the pity and fear. Otherwise, those who already deserve for the sufferings will never create any kind of pity and fear. Secondly, the tragic hero must be a person who enjoys prosperity, name and fame. Aristotle also says that the tragic hero should be well esteemed. He must enjoy prosperity. He must have a good name, good fame. He must be highly placed in the society, because for the fall of such person is more likely to excite the tragic emotions, because a higher esteemed, prosperous, namely famous person, when he falls down due to his error of judgment, due to his miscalculation, that will only create the tragic emotions than the fall of a person not so eminently placed. So in this way, Aristotle says that he must belong to some great family, as was the convention of Greek tragedy. Then he also says that an ideal plot must have a single issue. There should be single issue in any ideal plot. It must depict the misfortunes of the hero, not any other thing else. He says, Aristotle puts the second rank to that tragedy which have the double issue, just like happiness for the good and misery for the bad. So both the things or the double issues cannot take place in the tragedy. And if that takes place, that will not be a good tragedy. Because the pleasure in such a case is not a pleasure to tragedy. Rather, it will lead to us proper to comedy. That will be comedy if both the things are there. If the happiness for the good and misery for the bad, both the things are put in that, then that will be proper to comedy. In this way, Aristotle rules out tragicomedies, dramas which have double plots. So, Aristotle disregards double plots in the tragedy. He says that there should be only the single plot and that should depict the misfortune of the hero. It should not have double plot at all. So, this is all for right now, dear students. I hope you will get benefited by this video lecture, and if you have any queries you may ask me on my mobile number. So for now, thank you very much. See you with another chapter with analysis.